guys, welcome to this week's episode of Toxic Crime Tuesdays. So if you're new to my channel, hi, welcome. My name is Shannon Green and I am here every single Tuesday where I speak about a true crime case that I find particularly interesting. This week's episode is absolutely mental. It's about a woman who is batshit crazy and certainly should have been cast instead of Glenn Close in the film Fatal Attraction. Honestly, this bird is like the textbook definition of a bunny boiler. This episode tells the tale of a young, beautiful couple who on the outside looked like the perfect, happy magazine cover kind of couple. However, on the inside was a blonde, narcissistic volcano ready to blow. And then she did. On the 4th of June 2008, a 30-year-old man had his life so callously taken away from him. So, you can't already guess on what this case is about. Don't worry, I will get into it in a minute, but I'm sure some of you probably already know who I'm talking about. Before I dive in, I just want to say that if, like me, you're a desktop detective and for some strange reason you like the sound of my voice, then please click the subscribe button and also turn your notifications on because I'm here for you guys every single Tuesday. So let's get straight into it. So if you haven't already kind of gathered, this week's episode is about Travis Alexander and Jodi Arias. Travis Victor Alexander was born on July the 28th, 1977 in Riverside, California. He was born to Gary Alexander and Pamela Alexander. At the age of 11, Travis moved in with his paternal grandmother because sadly both of his parents were addicted to drugs. And for obvious reasons, they could no longer look after their son. So Travis had a really good relationship with his grandmother. He would dote on her and vice versa. So all in all, other than the obvious, his grandmother made sure that he had the best life possible and she tried to do everything she could to give Travis everything that he needed, all the love and support that any child should have. So in his adult life, which I'm guessing with some influence of the path that his parents took, Travis decided that he was going to go in the opposite direction. He did not want to go down the same route that his parents did. So Travis actually became a devoted Mormon. He lived a very strict lifestyle, no smoking, no drinking coffee, I can't imagine doing that, no alcohol, obviously no drugs and no sex before marriage. Travis was also a salesman and a motivational speaker for prepaid legal services, and he would often travel all over to give speeches at different meetings and conferences. Jodi Arias was born on July the 9th, 1980 in Salina, California. And if I'm getting any of these names wrong, these places, whatever, please let me know because it was only just recently brought to my attention that when I did the Zara Baker video, which was my very first video, I believe, I was pronouncing the place that Zara grew up in as Wagga Wagga, and someone in Australia actually commented on the video and let me know that it's actually Wagga Wagga. So it's been months and I thought that's what it was, and I just wish someone had told me before I did that video. So yeah, I'm always open to being corrected, so if I mispronounce anything, please just let me know, it's fine. Jodi was born in Salina in California. She was born to William and Sandra Arias. Jodi led a relatively normal, happy life. I don't like to use the word normal, but sometimes I don't really know what other word to use. Like, I don't know, a generalised cereal box kind of family life. Just normal seems to be the easier word to use in certain contexts, but I don't really like the word normal because I just think it's subjective. Like, who are we to define what normal is and what, because what's normal for me isn't necessarily normal for someone else. So, but I think you kind of get the idea of what I mean when I do say like a normal life. You know, there wasn't any warning signs, there wasn't any kind of abuse going on at home. Her parents seem very loving and supportive, and they seem very involved in Jodi's life, and Jodi seemed to have, you know, she had friends, she did relatively okay in school. I mean, she was very intelligent, but she didn't end up graduating high school. I'm not too sure why. I don't know if, you know, some people just don't. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're not clever. A lot of very intelligent people have left school at an early age just because sometimes that's not the path that they want to go down. But stay in school. So, yeah, her parents had, you know, a relatively happy marriage. I'm sure it wasn't happy all of the time because no marriage or relationship ever is. That's just not realistic. And they seemed to be very good parents to Jodi. She was intelligent and she was very interested in photography. However, you know, having a career in photography can not always go according to plan. It can't always be like financially stable. So Jodi actually had a job working in a Mexican restaurant as a server. In September of 2006, Travis Alexander was living in Mesa in Nevada, whilst Jodi was living in California with her boyfriend of 4 years named Daryl. Now, Daryl was 40 and Jodi, I believe, was 21 at the time when they first started dating. So obviously there was quite a big age gap, but also as well, Jodi wanted to be in a relationship where it would eventually go into, you know, like having kids and getting married and, you know, all those kind of milestones that are very important to most relationships. I mean, that's obviously what she'd wanted, but Daryl, he'd been married, he already had a kid, that was kind of it for him. So they kind of reached like a stalemate in their relationship. So I think Jodi was kind of getting to the point where she was considering ending the relationship. And during this time in September of 2006 is when Travis and Jodi meet for the first time. Travis is in Vegas for a conference and Jodi attends as well. So just before I get into this, I've watched some documentaries and I've watched other people talking about this case. Upon seeing some videos of other people covering this case, a lot of people have said, and I don't want to bash other YouTubers, but some YouTubers have said that Travis's friends didn't know about this relationship and that he had kept his relationship with Jodi a secret. However, that's not true. I've watched some footage from Travis's friends, and one of his friends actually introduced the two during the conference. One of his friends come up to Travis and he said, "Hey, there's a really hot girl that's on my team. I think you should go and talk to her." So Travis goes over to her and he is just instantly stunned. He just thinks she's so beautiful. She's got long blonde hair. She's got like what some people would consider a perfect body. And she was just beautiful. And she was very kind, very soft-spoken. And Travis just seemed to be infatuated with her. And vice versa. Jodi felt the same as well. However, Jodi still had a boyfriend in California. So I think the two kind of like exchanged numbers and Jodi went back to California, and she broke off her relationship with Daryl. Daryl moved, I think, somewhere closer to be with his son, and Jodi stayed in the home that her and Daryl shared. And this is when Jodi and Travis begin a long distance relationship, because obviously Travis lives in Nevada whilst Jodi lives in California. As they're having a long distance relationship, their relationship quickly becomes sexual. However, like I've said, Travis was a devout Mormon and Jodi was not. So this struck up an issue. And Jodi suddenly became very interested in practicing Mormonism. So she was baptized by Travis in a ceremony in Southern California in November of 2006. And eventually Jodi moved to Mesa, where Travis was living, to be closer to him. And I believe this is when Jodi's true colours began to show. They'd only been in a relationship for about 5 months, and they were travelling a lot. They both liked to travel to loads of different places where Jodi could take pictures, and that was something that they did have in common. However, the relationship soon began to turn sour. Jodi was just very possessive and obsessed with Travis, and she would just get so jealous all of the time and get very angry over the most minuscule things, which would obviously cause them to argue very, very frequently, which, as you can imagine, took its toll on Travis's state of mind. And Travis's friends began to dislike Jodi. They just thought that there was something about her that was off and was unhinged. Little did they know how unhinged Jodi actually was. So after just 5 months of being in a relationship, Travis actually ends the relationship. He feels that Jodi is just far too clingy and obsessive, and it just wasn't working out. However, Travis still decides to maintain a sexual relationship with Jodi, which, you know, isn't the best idea. Obviously, Jodi was still very much invested in the relationship. She was obsessed with him, and any time Travis would ring her or text her, I'm guessing probably late at night, like a late night booty call, he'll probably text her and be like, hey Jodi, do you want to come round for a quick bang? She'd be there straight away. And it's just adding fuel to the fire. Again, I'm not victim blaming at all, because even if you're stringing someone along, you don't deserve to die for it whatsoever. So, sorry, that was a bit of a spoiler alert as well. Well, we all know it's going to end in death, don't we? It's true crime. Travis is still in constant contact with Jodi. They are regularly sending each other explicit messages, exchanging nudes and meeting up to have sex. But Travis decides that Jodi isn't the one for him, and he wants to pursue other women. So he does, and he starts chatting to other women, and Jodi, because she's pretty much stalking Travis, she caught wind of this, and she was not happy at all. There was one particular woman named Lisa that Travis was talking to, and Jodi would turn up at her house and bang on, like knock on her door and all of her windows to scare her, like late at night, and then run away. And she would do that quite regularly, which is just bizarre. And Jodi would often turn up at Travis's house unannounced. She broke into his house on multiple occasions. She broke in through the garage a few times, and she actually, I don't mean to laugh, but it's just so ridiculous. There was one time where she actually crawled through the dog flap of Travis's home. And it's just, why would you do, it's just crazy. It's just a whole nother level of crazy. It's like, if someone isn't inviting you round don't turn up at their house, and certainly don't crawl through their dog flap. I don't know how. Don't get me wrong, she was pretty skinny, but how does anyone fit through that? But yeah, that's what she did anyway. And on one occasion as well, when she broke in, she stole Travis's diary and read it, which I'm guessing she wasn't very happy with the content, and it just sparked even more anger. So on a few other occasions as well, Jodi slashed Travis's tyres on his car, and she would just ring him and text him constantly. She'd just stalk him, she'd follow him everywhere, and she just would not leave him alone. But even though Jodi was doing all these things, Travis was still staying in constant contact with Jodi. This still didn't stop him from texting her and ringing her and asking her to come round for a quick shag. So in April of 2008, Jodi decides to move back to Eureka in California to live with her grandparents, and Travis and Jodi are still in regular contact and are still meeting up for sex. On June the 2nd of 2008, a few calls are exchanged between Jodi and Travis. These calls were not recorded, so we don't actually know what was said in them. However, just a few hours later, Jodi decided to set off in her car and drive to Utah. So once she'd done this, she drove to Utah and she got a rental car. She also purchased a large amount of gasoline so that she didn't need to make any stops on her way to her destination. Jodi also visited her friends in Southern California whilst on her way to Nevada. So it is said that on the 3rd of June, Jodi arrives at Travis's home and they spent the day shagging and hanging out, and yeah, there was photographic evidence to support all of this. They took pictures of themselves in all kinds of sexual positions. And the next day, on June the 4th, Travis actually had an important conference meeting that he was supposed to attend. However, he did not. And people started to get worried. And then just a few days later, after a lot of Travis's friends trying to get in contact with him and see what's up and why he isn't replying, because normally he'd always respond, his friends and his roommate that he was obviously living with, they went into Travis's room. His bedroom door was locked from the inside, and they found Travis dead on the floor, well, of the ensuite in his bedroom. He was dead on the floor by the shower. He had been stabbed 27 times. He had been cut along his throat from ear to ear. He was virtually decapitated. And he was also shot in the head once as well. So this was, upon seeing it, which I can only imagine must have been like the most horrendous thing to witness, especially when it's your close friend. And especially the roommate as well, because he was there. He wasn't there when Jodi was there, but he was there since then, and he had no idea that his friend was dead in his room. He thought his friend was away at this conference. He just presumed that's where he was. So he literally had no idea of his whereabouts and had no idea that literally just a few feet away his friend was dead. One of his friends rings emergency operators straight away, obviously absolutely hysterical, and upon speaking with the emergency operator, they ask, you know, is there anyone that would want to harm Travis, or would he have harmed himself in any way? Is there any reasoning for him wanting to harm himself? And the friend actually says that he wouldn't do that, he wouldn't commit suicide, but he has been quite down recently because he's broken up with his girlfriend. And then the emergency operator asks if he's had any trouble with anyone recently, and this is when Jodi's name is mentioned, and she says, well, actually, he has had a lot of trouble with his ex-girlfriend. She slashed his tyres, she stalked him, she won't leave him alone. So already the fingers are being pointed at Jodi, because who else would have done it? He didn't seem to have any kind of enemies. He was just a typical guy. He didn't really get into trouble. He was a Mormon. He had a good job. He just kind of got on with his life. Didn't really seem to get into any trouble or bother anyone. He had no criminal record. So no one could really understand who would have done this other than Jodi Arias. So Jodi was trying to cover her tracks at this point, and she had drove back to Reading and returned the rental car and went back home as normal and pretended like she never even went to Travis's home. She had deleted all of the images that were on the camera that was found at Travis's home, which police had gathered up as evidence, and they managed to find the images on there. So with the timestamp and everything else, they figured out that Jodi was there. So not long after that, Jodi was called in for interrogation. There was actually a picture as well that was found on the camera which was just awful. There's one where he's just showering, and then the next photo is him looking at Jodi like dead in the eye, and you could see like the terror in his eyes. So it's possible that that's when she was literally about to kill him, and he could see the weapon in her hand, and you could just see like the terror in his eyes. It's just, oh, it's horrendous. Before Jodi's actually brought in for questioning, she contacts the police department herself, and she couldn't get through to like the lead investigator initially. So she leaves a message with the department, and then he gets back to her. And he rings her and sort of like asks what it's about, and she said that she was a really good friend of Travis's, and if he had any questions she would happily come in and answer them. So at this point the police didn't actually have the images, so they were like, yeah, sure, come in. And then by the time she came in for the interrogation, they had the images, they had the timestamp, they knew that somehow Jodi was involved. But they didn't want to scare Jodi off, because at this point she didn't have a lawyer and she could easily lawyer up if she wanted to. So he decided to just play nice initially and kind of act dumb, like he didn't suspect her at all. So he started off just being nice and casual and just asking her questions about her relationship with Travis. And the whole interrogation is just bizarre. Like, Jodi's behaviour is just so weird. She's just so fixated on herself. She just keeps asking irrelevant questions, talking about irrelevant stuff. She like picks up this this like recording device, and she's like, oh, is this on? Is this on? Are you recording it? And he's like, no, it's not. We're not using that at the minute. And then like he leaves for a little bit, and she stood there and she just starts singing, and she just absolutely brutally destroys a really good Dido song as well, which really infuriates me. And it's just, I will put the whole clip in the description box because you need to watch it. It is just the most bizarre thing ever. So during the investigation, the police are kind of like just compiling all of the evidence that they've got against Jodi, trying to figure out a motive, and although the motive is pretty clear, and it was a very savage attack, so it seemed personal. It didn't seem like it was an attempted robbery, or like not that he was into drugs, or like a drug deal that went wrong or anything. It was a personal attack. It was someone that wanted him dead. They wanted him to suffer. And just a month prior to Travis's death, Jodi staged a break-in in her grandparents' home, and a gun was missing. And this gun matched the gun that was used to kill Travis. So the evidence against Jodi was just overwhelming. There was also a handprint that was found in Travis's home, which the DNA belonged to both Travis and Jodi. There was the photos. There was also in Jodi's rental car, there was blood stains on the mats as well. Obviously there's the gun, there's the fact that she was there, and there's the fact that she drove all the way there, and the phone calls, and obviously all of the previous stuff that had happened prior, like her slashing his tyres, her stalking him, and you know, so they may have just had one more argument that just tipped her over the edge, and she just thought, maybe if I can't have you, then no one can. Like, this woman was obsessed, clearly very, very unhinged, and she didn't want to be without Travis, and she certainly didn't want anyone else to have him, so she made sure that that happened. So during Jodi's investigation, I think the investigator kind of gets tired of her bullshit and basically tells her, look, we've got these images, we've got the timestamp, we know that you were there. And she was like, she suddenly changes and she goes, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I was there, but I didn't kill him. What happened was, I was there with him, and then some guys come in and attempted a robbery, and they just started stabbing Travis, and Travis said to me, go, you need to go, so I just left. So the police officer was a bit like, well, if that happened, why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you do anything about it? And she just said that she was scared. She was scared that they were going to come after her. But by this point, it didn't really matter what she said, what kind of bullshit story she gave to the police, because they had plenty of evidence against her. And on July the 9th of 2008, she was indicted. She was indicted by a grand jury in Maricopa County in Arizona. She was arrested at her home for first degree murder and extradited to Arizona on September the 5th, 2008. And during this time, she just changed her story so many times. There was one story that he tried to beat he beat the shit out of her, so she killed him and had to stab him 27 times. So there was that, and then she also, I think during her trial, she actually gave these letters that were allegedly from Travis, and they had stated, well, Travis had basically confessed to being a paedophile. So not only had she killed this man, she had completely dishonoured his memory. Like, what more could you do to a person? It was just awful. Like, it just baffles me that that she could actually think that other people can believe her bullshit, and that other people would think, oh, poor girl, she's been through so much. Like, she probably thinks that, and during her trial, she actually makes a t-shirt that says Survivor on it. Like, this girl is f***ing crazy, honestly. Like, I've never come across a case. There's some that are close, but never come across a case that is this bizarre and a person that is this unhinged. And it's like, why are there not any warning signs? Like, did previous boyfriends or family members, like, she needed to be locked up in a mental asylum. Like, how had that not been done before? And she's just f***ing crazy, and I genuinely think she believes her lies. So on May the 8th of 2013, Jodi Arias was sentenced for first degree premeditated murder. And at this point, the death penalty was on the cards. And Jodi had previously said that if she had done it, then she would beg for the death penalty. But as soon as she found out that the death penalty was on the cards, she changed her tune. and she actually gave a speech to the judge where she stated that if she didn't have the death penalty, then she could do so much good. She would be able to do so much in prison. She would be able to teach Spanish to other inmates, and she could start a book club, and she made these t-shirts that said survivor on it for domestic violence victims, and oh my god, just all this other fucking shit. It was just ridiculous. Then obviously there was the penalty sentencing that needed to happen, and that didn't happen until 2 years later, because initially there was a mistrial, it was a hung jury, they just couldn't decide. And then eventually it ended up being that she was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. So Jodi will be spending the rest of her life in prison, where she still doesn't even take full responsibility of what she's done. She still claims that one day, well, when she was at Travis's house, she had dropped his camera and he shouted at her and said something like, oh, a 5-year-old could hold a camera better than that, and then just started beating her. So she killed him in self-defense. I don't believe that, and I really hope you guys don't either. But it's okay. You're entitled to your own opinion. You know, we all have our own conclusions. It's fine. But I will be judging you if you think she's innocent. So that is it for this week's case. Like I said, it is an absolutely mental one. It's a bit more high profile than what I usually like to do, but I discovered it ages ago. But it's just one that keeps popping up lately, and I saw something about it the other day, and I just thought, I haven't really had one this crazy for a while. So yeah, I thought I'd do it to mix it up a bit. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed me talking about it. And yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching. So enjoy the rest of your week. Stay safe, stay fabulous, stay spooky. Bye guys.